Roadkill. Hey guys, Scary Stories here. I hope you're doing well. Tonight, I have a terrifying road trip story for you. Have you ever seen the movie Jeepers Creepers? No spoilers, but it's basically exactly that. Just like 10 billion times more horrifying and repulsive. You've been warned. It's really scary. But before we get into the story, I just want to say, in case you're new to the channel, I post videos like this every Thursday and Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I also try to sprinkle in shorts throughout the rest of the week, looking at ghost videos, ghost pictures, or just posting really tiny, short horror stories. I like to look through the archives of the internet to find old websites, forum posts, and news articles to share with you here. So, if you enjoy all things creepy, strange, or just slightly unsettling, maybe consider hitting that little red button down below. It really helps me out and I greatly appreciate it. But with that out of the way, let's get into the story. I hope you enjoy. About 5 years ago, I moved to a city I'm living in now to go to school. Before I moved here, I was living about 1,400 kilometers west of my present location, and I was working as a pump technician in a rural Albertan municipality. The month before I moved, I had to make a number of trips back and forth to finalize everything, what with finding an apartment, packing my stuff, etc., etc. Anyways, what happened to me took place on one of those many return trips. It was late at night, and I was about 2 hours away from the town that was my home at the time. Now, this was only my second time making the return trip, so because I didn't have the route perfectly worked out, I was using a GPS to supplement my knowledge of the road. I reached an area where I knew I had to make an exit. The only problem was, I couldn't remember which one I had to take. I looked at the GPS, and it told me I still had about 1 kilometer to go before my turn. I continued driving and looked at the GPS periodically to gauge the distance. When I was about 500 meters from my turn, the GPS began to flicker for a moment, and then it displayed a route reconfiguration screen. The GPS now told me to drive an extra 15 minutes down the road and take a completely different exit. Now, I was in no mood to argue with my GPS. I figured, screw it. It's calculating the quickest route. What's the worst that could happen? So, I complied. I took the turn the GPS told me to take, and drove along the road for about 45 minutes with no problems. My iPod was long dead, so I was just listening to the radio, chain-smoking cigarettes, and having the best time of my life, given the circumstances, that is. Those circumstances being, I have no idea where I am. It's 2 a.m. and I've been driving for 9 to 10 hours. That's around the point I began to enter a dense fog. This was one of those fogs where you could barely see the road in front of you, the kind where you had to kill your high beams because the reflection was just blinding. Cue that Silent Hill music. While I was driving through this fog, I began to notice parts of the road felt a little weird to drive on, and when I hit sections where the fog seemed to clear, I could tell that the highway was suddenly a good 15 feet above the ditches. You literally could not see the ditches on either side of the road, just the field where they climbed up towards. It looked as though the highway was a winding bridge. What was worse, however, was what had been making the odd sounds on the road. Roadkill. But not just your everyday, run-of-the-mill squirrel, porcupine, or other small animal. It was more like somebody had fed a deer a stick of dynamite, and then set it off. Animals had been exploded all over the road. It was as if a semi had been plowing through animals at an incredible speed. It wasn't even just 1 or 2 animals either. Every kilometer had at least two exploded animals on the pavement that I could see between the thick walls of fog. I looked at the GPS again, and it said that I had about 80 kilometers to my turnoff, which was a problem because I was only going about 60 as the conditions were absolutely terrible. I sucked it up though. It wasn't like I had much of a choice anyways. The radio lost its signal around this point. Two stations were fighting over the only frequency that seemed to be getting any signal whatsoever. This really is Silent Hill. I turned it down a bit and lit up another cigarette. Then I noticed a yellow glow on the side of the road, coming up from the ditch. Instinctively, I slowed down in case it might have been a deer or something. As I passed by, going about 30, it didn't look like a deer at all. It was completely hairless, and sort of had a dark, mustard sort of color to it. It was right at the edge of the highway too, as if peering over the ditch. I can't say for certain, but it almost looked human-like, as though it were some sort of bipedal creature. It wasn't human, whatever it was. Its eyes were golden, almost glowing. What was most off-putting was when I drove by it, it hunkered down. It was as if it were trying to hide from me, with only its eyes visible. And as I passed by, its head turned, and it got up a bit again, watching me as I drove off. That really freaked me out. Little did I know, things were only about to get more crazy. As you can imagine, I didn't know what to think about whatever it was or wasn't that I had seen in the ditch. But rest assured, I just wanted to get home at this point. The fog cleared considerably at this point, and the fields along the side of the highway had slowly progressed into a more heavily wooded area that didn't seem to be populated whatsoever. I started to realize there was a problem. When I was about 2 kilometers away from the highway I was supposed to turn onto, there just wasn't any highway in the distance. When I got 300 meters away, still no highway. I got closer and closer, and the GPS told me I would need to take a right turn in 200 meters, then 100, then 50, and then it tells me not to turn to the right, but to turn left instead. This is also confusing because there should have been a highway there, but all I could see was a single, tiny dirt road that trailed off into the woods. I really should have known better. Should have known that turning down that road was a bad idea. But what else was I supposed to do? I turned left onto this dirt road, which was more like a path. It was so narrow, my car could barely fit onto it. What happened next is the most frightening thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life. The road started doubling back towards the direction I had just come from, kind of like a half circle. The road was so narrow and the trees were so thick that I couldn't actually see what was happening. I couldn't see that I was turning towards the way I had just come until I completed the turn. But once I had my way around the half circle, the dirt road ended, and it led into a small clearing. What was inside that clearing, you might ask? Oh, you know, just an abandoned church and a graveyard. I looked up at the bell tower and saw what I am still convinced to this day was a silhouette staring down at me. I looked down at my GPS, and on the screen flashed the 3 most terrifying words imaginable. You have arrived. And through the static in the radio, I could have sworn I heard a scream. Now, a little disclaimer. I don't know what the hell was actually going on that night, and I never will. I was obviously beyond tired at this point, but to perceive things this inaccurately, I don't know. I might have just been seeing things, but I know that my GPS took me somewhere it shouldn't have. This is a true story. At least, it is to the best of my recollection. And before you ask, no, I've never used that GPS ever again. I threw that thing out years ago. The last time I told my friends about this story, I had a lot of follow-up questions. I'll try and answer some of them here for you now. Where exactly was this highway? I'm not 100% sure. Like I said, I was in the process of moving across the country, and I still hadn't nailed down the most optimal route yet to get from my old place to my new place. But it was either Highway 646, Highway 831, or Highway 41. I'm pretty sure it was Highway 41, but in any case, it was one of those three, and between exits 16 to 28. Have I tried finding this place during the day? No. I haven't taken any of those highways since. I have tried to find it on Google Maps, by the way, but to no avail. One site that I thought might have been the church that my GPS took me to was this one here. But as you can see, this obviously is not a church. The big issue of this story is that it happened so many years ago now. The church might not be there anymore. Some of the trees might have been cleared. I don't know. Honestly, I don't think my memory of the event is entirely trustworthy anymore. But I do know what I saw that night. Between all the roadkill, the fog, the strange person in the ditch, I know that those things were real. So, what'd you think of that one? Real life Jeepers Creepers? I think so. Anybody here seen the third Jeepers Creepers? I tried watching it one day, but just couldn't do it. I always liked the first one, but the effects on the guy's wings always really bummed me out. I think at one point the main characters hit him with their car and he's laying in the middle of the road. They think they've killed him, but then his terrible CGI wings burst out and he flies away. Yeah. It's a good movie though. I did enjoy it. And I should probably get around to watching the sequels. But yeah, let me know if anything strange like this has ever happened to you. Have you ever had your GPS lead you to some less desirable locations? Have you ever tried Randonautica? That weird app that you have to manifest what you want to find and it'll take you there on the map? Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed the story. And I hope you're taking care of yourself. But that's all I got for you. Leave a like if you liked the video. Dislike it if you disliked it. And I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Bye for now.